This is another episode of The Journey, and today's interview is with Pedro Silva. And I get to, he's over here making faces already. I get to ask you the big question. As a director of evangelization, what does that mean? I want to start with that.
Okay, it's everybody asked that question. I think even the church is trying to still figure out what that actually means. But for me, as I really put with my title, my job is to create a space where people can encounter Jesus Christ here in our parish.
Oh, that's a nice short answer. I've never heard something so
Well,
to
you
the
know,
point. Very nice. So,
brevity is the soul of wit.
so good for you. I'm sure that comes in handy. So
Sometimes.
when you're looking at this role here,
Okay.
creating a space means all sorts of things. I can imagine a lot of bullet points underneath that.
Yes.
Can you give me like your first or your main point under creating a space? What does that really mean?
I think it's prayer. I think it begins with me. That if I'm not willing to be open to conversion, to be able to have the conviction to repent, and to approach God through the sacrament of confession for forgiveness, then how am I ever going to be able to communicate His love and His mercy to other people? I think first of all, I have to set the example of being an ambassador of God's love and mercy.
I like that term. And so in saying what you just said, you're sort of talking about what you would want for other people.
Yes.
The very same mindset. Starting with an attitude of
Receiving God's mercy, to be able to repent and ask forgiveness. Even with the first reconciliation kids yesterday, throughout the whole time we're giving the talk, right? I give the talk, and then they're even playing the game, and even moments of pauses, I'll ask them, he's like, what do we get from God's mercy? And they all screamed, the joy of His forgiveness. And I feel and there is joy in receiving that forgiveness and living from that forgiveness, which allows us to approach the sacraments much more disposed to actively receive versus constantly grasping at things.
So if receiving God's mercy is first, what keeps people from wanting that or from seeking it?
Pride.
I knew you were going to say that because
And
that's just what I
indifference.
thought. Pride and indifference.
Yes.
So if you are going to create a space, an opening for that, you're creating a space where people are not feeling the pride. How do we do that? How do you do
Relationships. Relationships. Even something simple as for the young adults, the Theology on Tap, and how that has already brought so many fruits already, with young adults wanting to join St. Joseph's and wanting to participate in the life of the parish. Because I think, first of all, it starts with fellowship. We can't be scared of each other. Kathy, both Kathys may try to bite me once in a while. But still, I pursue Kathy, because ultimately, people are not the enemy. The enemy, as St. Paul says, are the principalities, not flesh and blood. So people are to be loved.
Which makes me wonder if another relationship, i.e. a relationship with God, is the same thing. Do you feel sometimes that people think God is the enemy?
The enemy sometimes...
Maybe not that right word.
Unjust, judge, sort of like the great watchmaker that kind of sits and then laughs at people. But I say start with forgiveness because as I've come to look, because you got to look back at your life and seeing how God, because every life is taken up into the great event of the Incarnation, that all of us participate in the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. And so part of looking back, I can look back through the lens of grace, and I look at the hardships, and I look at the sufferings and the afflictions that I've suffered. I can look back at those people who were the agents of those suffering, and I can look back and say thank you.
Okay, that's a great place for me now to ask you another question. Have there been sufferings and heartaches in your past that propelled you in God's direction, and any that you would want to share? Because you're talking about journeys and looking back, and that's just what we're doing right here. So
So,
putting you on the spot.
yes, I think one for me, when I was when I was a senior in high school, I was in AP Government, and I was okay. So I was like a degenerate, you know. I was a bad kid. Um, so I was acting up in class. I didn't particularly like my teacher, and so Miss Prowse called in a conference between me and her and my mom, and she told my mom, "Your son will never amount to anything." And from that moment on, I believed a lie that I was stupid
Mm.
and that I was incapable of getting through school. And that's a lie that persisted. All I thought I had to give was a good heart. That Pedro's fun. Pedro is joyful, but he's not. We can't depend on him to give a talk. We can't depend on him to you know to carry through with the work. And but again, God works through people because we're Catholics, so we believe that He works through the sacraments. So if He works through water, oil, He's going to work through people, most especially people. And even St. Paul, he's like, I chose the nothings of the world to humble those who think that they are something.
So that teacher humbled you.
In that moment, I think she did. But then, but looking back at it, I can look a lot of youth to it. Because then when I went to seminary, I was afraid because I didn't think I would be able to get through the studies. And it's hard stuff because
Yeah.
it's philosophy. You're like getting like dumped into the humanities, and so you have to learn a whole different language. I remember spending like 30 minutes on one page, and I couldn't understand one sentence. It was difficult, but God surrounded me with good brothers and loving lay professors that they pulled the best out of me.
Mm.
They encouraged me. And so when I'm looking back at that experience, like at my teacher, I can say thank you. Because in a lot of ways, I did need to be humbled.
Mm.
And and that and that what I can give now, I can look at kids that were like, they're sort of like degenerates themselves. I can look at them and kids that think that they're stupid, they have nothing to give. I can look at them as like, I was one of you. And if you don't believe me, ask Father Armando. He was one of the guys that helped me.
So this humbling really is talking about how we each need to consider our failures as something that's not the horrible thing to be avoided, but something once it happens to embrace as a gift.
Yes, because every circumstance in life is redeemable. No one's beyond God's grace, and I truly believe that. And I say that to a lot of parents that are struggling with their own kids and their own stories. And I look at my mom and dad, all three of us were terrible. And we all fought with each other. I mean, it was like World War III in our home for like 16 years. And now, looking back, we can be grateful because of how it purified our intentions and how it purified the gifts that God has given us and discovered gifts that were there that we didn't know. And so it was a very enriching experience for us. So I look at a lot of these parents and tell them is like, rejoice in the sufferings that you're going through now, because it is in the suffering that He's going to purify your love for each other, and that love is going to trickle down to your children. And so much so that all my brothers are now back in the church.
I was just going to ask you that. Where are they now? What are they doing now? And you feel as if they've come around to the same conclusion.
Oh yes, oh yes. My brother Marcus, and what's funny is, my brothers themselves humbled me. My brothers told me that I was the worst older brother that anybody could ask for, and that hurt. My brothers also told me that they thought that I was not intelligent and that I was dumb. And that all see how the Lord just kind of like flips the table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I had a hand in bringing my brother Marcus was an aerospace engineer for Gulfstream, and his used to be Protestant wife or Protestant fiance into the church. Now his wife been married for 6 years, and they have 4 beautiful kids, two of which I'm a godfather. And Jose, he went through rehab, and He went through his whole thing with the New Age movement, and eventually, I called him every day, and I would speak to him even when I was busy. If he called me, I would make time for him. And at the end of it all, he decided that he wanted to learn philosophy, and I gave him a school. It was one school, Ave Maria, because he wanted to learn Thomism, because that's what I was learning at the time, and he saw how that really transformed my own spiritual life and my intellectual life. And so he wanted to learn Thomism, and so I was like, Ave Maria. So he applied to one school. He applied to that one school, and he went through, and before that, he did the hard work, graduated from community college with his AA and a magna cum laude, and then he got a full ride to go to Ave. And now he's married, he's got a beautiful kid, and he did so well at Ave that before his senior year started, they asked him if he wanted to join their a master's program in theology, because he did so well in philosophy. And so he got to work and got 1 free year of education for his master's because of his diligence and hard work, and especially he'll credit this all to grace.
So you're describing a couple people's different experiences with this, and I think that's something that a lot of us need to know, is that some people are going to require more suffering. I mean, if you put it that way, more of the edges rubbed off than others.
Yes.
And so we end up comparing ourselves and feeling, like why is he going forward and why am I still suffering, etc. What do you say to people about that?
This is why I love the Catholic Church. Honestly, okay, so you go to a Protestant church, you walk in there, most people in there, they're dressed and they look the same. You walk into a Catholic church, you have people wearing suits, you got people wearing shorts, you have people wearing flip-flops. I mean, I used to wear that was me back in the day. And so there's a variety of people, because it really represents and even politically, you go to Protestant churches, there are a lot of it's all red or all blue, and here it's we have everything, because only in the church can Christ, especially in the Catholic Church, because of the mercy that's always available in the truth can always hold contrarieties in itself, because he's the head of the body, and so he can hold the sinner and the saint side by side.
So we need that variety, you're saying, in order for each person to find somebody that they can connect with?
And a person to sanctify you. Because sometimes, even Father Armando and I, for example, when we first met, we didn't like each other. I thought he was pretentious,
years ago.
And he thought I was a dirty hippie. Yes. So we did not like each other. But it was Father Armando in recognizing that there was something new in me, because when I was open to grace, it really affected me, and he heard that, and instead of holding on to his preconceived notions, he approached me and started seeking me in friendship, and it changed my life. Now he's one of my best friends, and so some of the people that I didn't like or I had a really strong aversion to eventually become my best friends. And that's what I learned. You have to seek people out, because I think that in the people that you have the hardest time with, those are the ones that you'll have the greatest friendships with, if you are willing to pursue them and endure the careful effort of suffering discomfort for their sake.
So what you're really describing is that your position as a director of evangelism is really one where you're trying to not do it all yourself, but to get people to all do that with and for each other. So
Yes.
building relationships within the church, so that we can all evangelize.
Yes.
I mean, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, one of the things that I've been doing since I've gotten here is recognize that there are people with really great gifts. We have so much talent here, and I've been inviting them into discipleship, and I give them a book, and they kind of set the schedules. If they want to come in every week, they come in every week. If they want to come in once a month, they come in once a month. And as we're going through this process, they're receiving that healing, and they're realizing things about themselves that they had no idea that were there, and they have much more to offer. not only to their families, but to the community.
So I've heard it said before, and you're reminding me of this, that God is really efficient. He does things for another person, for their benefit and for the benefit of others. That we're all growing, and He doesn't waste anything. I mean, have you heard that before?
I have. So I would disagree with the word efficiency.
Oh,
And
good. I was hoping for a better word.
I would say intentional. Because
I like
one of the
that
things
better.
that I always say, I tell people all the time, you gotta waste time with God's people. And sometimes you gotta go the roundabout way. Even like Lord of the Rings, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Is like if they would have been able to cut through the mountain, they would have never gotten to Moria. If they never gotten to Moria, then Gandalf would have never been Gandalf the White. And so all these things, they're all parts that fit the narrative. So like sometimes you gotta go the long way. And all who wander are lost. So like you gotta have that time. Sometimes
So don't be afraid of getting lost and wasting time.
Sometimes the best time of your life is when you're lost. Because that's the moment where there's really is like an occasion of grace. Because then you're willing to take risks.
Boy, that really makes sense. I'm going to go get lost now and
Don't tell Father John I told
tell
you.
Father John what happened. Wow, well, this is a really fun way of looking at evangelism where, in my background, and maybe a lot of other people's, there's a stereotype about that word that has to do with persuading, arguing, debating, and trying to have somebody believe what you believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, have you run across that stereotype?
I've run it with Protestants, Catholics, and atheists. They're all the same.
Yeah.
I would say this. I tell people all the time because I did have like I had a certain like fame back in South Carolina. It's like this expectation. Send your child to Pedro and they'll come back to the church.
Wow.
And I always had to, I know that was
That's scary.
and I was praying with that, and I had such an aversion to it because it's like that. I can't do anything apart from His grace, and so like for me, I always tell people it's like I don't convert anyone. God is the one that converts the hearts. I simply invite them into look at their relationship with God, and so through my relationship with them, they can encounter Christ within me. And hopefully that can like shed some of the preconceived notions and some of the resentments or anger that they have towards the church.
Yeah, like people going like this.
Because charity is so important because I think, and that's something that we miss. And when we're not detached from our skewed view of the church, that we have to like do violence to get people in. That's when you have to look at yourself. You have to look at yourself because for me, in the moment when I have somebody that's really difficult to speak with, and they're triggering things inside of me, they're pressing about certain wounds that God wants to heal, and so I take a moment to recollect, so I can encounter Christ within them, because. Again, I'm the problem at the moment. My anger or frustration or my irritability is coming from a place from within, not from without.
So it's a little signal.
It is.
Take a look.
And so like when we have the disposition to receive Christ within the other, we're able to endure those things. And we can receive them as Christ would receive them. And I think that's like one of the biggest things, but that requires humility. And I think, let me just give a quick definition. It's like it is the
Say the word again?
humility.
Oh, I thought you said something else.
No, humility. And it's a disposition for us to know in accordance with the truth our strengths and our weaknesses. It's self-knowledge. Because when you have self-knowledge, and that's a gift of grace. When you have self-knowledge, we're able to respond to situations versus react. Because in the gift of self-knowledge also comes this deeper understanding of how patient, kind, and loving God is with me. And if I can receive that, I first have to give that to myself. And then I can love my neighbor as myself.
Well, it's a beautiful description of what you do and of the opportunities that are really here for all of us. Um, I think you described them as grace moments or something like that. And I think that if we see ourselves as all of us as evangelists, is that the right word though?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, evangelists,
Father
we
John
all are.
says
We are missionary disciples,
disciple.
yeah.
So I think if we all see ourselves like that, you know, it's exponentially going to grow that much faster. But I think if we can all then, like you say, maybe the first step is take a moment, take several moments for self-knowledge and awareness. That's going to make it more and more possible.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to ask you about something that's fun in what I read about your.
Oh, God, this is getting heavy.
Yeah, I know it was good. We're going to lighten up now. So you're a beach bum Catholic.
Yes.
Tell me about that. I think I'm imagining what that all is, but
It's a stable disposition to always want to chill. It's like you got work to do, but at the same time, when work is done, you can like dial it back and you just want to chill. Like one of the things I love doing here in Eldersburg on my day off. I love going to Davidas like around 3. I buy like 2 tall boys, and I smoke a cigar and read my books and drink
so
a
that's
beer.
not the beach, but that's a metaphor.
But that's kind of
for
like what
chilling.
I'll be doing at the beach.
Okay.
That's what I'll be doing at the beach, and so I love doing. I think that's that leisure. That leisure is so good because I love what J.K. Chesterton said. He's like, only in Catholicism can the pipe, and the cross all work together as one. I love that because it's so true. Because Christ came to redeem the world. And if anything is created, therefore it's good. But it's about moderation and knowing how to use it.
I'm glad you said that part because some people listening and watching might
This
be
is
a
not a
little bit
license
nervous.
for
So, if you were out in the street talking to somebody, how would you get into conversation with someone about faith, just not knowing them at all?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So I think my rule is I never intentionally try to bring faith into a conversation because sometimes that's when we're forcing and not actively receiving a person. I think I want to meet them this is a person, and I want to reverence and dignity where they are at this moment in their lives. And so even Aquinas will say that we're not just to have friendships of virtue. Friendships that are leading us towards becoming holy. Like this is our intention. We're going to become holy, and we're going to do this together. But no, also friendships of pleasure. Like I do have friends that enjoy. They're not Catholic, but they enjoy to have a beer and smoke a cigar and have a conversation. I can be friends with them, and they're people of utility. People that I'm able to give something to them. There's an exchange. But so Aquinas is how many friends should we have? We should have all the friends. But in each one recognizing where they are and praying that the friendship of utility will grow into a friendship of pleasure, and that friendship of pleasure will grow eventually to a friendship of virtue. And that way we're loving people into the kingdom. People always want shortcuts, but charity never takes shortcuts.
Oh, I love that. I think that's a really good quote. I think we should write that somewhere. Pedro says, no, I think Jesus has said that. I mean, that's what he was all about, right? I mean, love first. The greatest of these is love.
Yes.
Wow. Well, if you were going to summarize your journey in a couple words, or in a picture, or in some way, how would you characterize it? You can use the metaphor of driving on a highway, taking an exit, getting lost.
Like
which
Lord of
might
the Rings.
All right, there we are.
Like Lord of the Rings.
I should have known.
Like Lord of the Rings. It really is like Lord of the Rings. Yeah. When I first read the book, I'm just like, this is my life, and it's wonderful.
Well, it's a wonderful journey, and we're going to wrap this up there because I just think you've shared so many wonderful things for us to chew on, for us to think about, right? And so I think if we were to summarize, we would say self-knowledge. We would say God's grace, encountering God not the enemy, people not the enemy, thanking the Lord for any kind of failures or disappointments you have, knowing that they're actually gifts for you. And sometimes that's hard for people to swallow, isn't it?
And the joy of His forgiveness.
He
To
said,
actively receive that joy, because like it's so good,
Amen.
so good. Mm.
So, thank you to Pedro.
Thank you, Kathy.
And we thank you for
And
this
Kathy.
episode. Yes. And we will look forward to the next one.